What's up guys, my name is Andy. In this video, I'm gonna be upgrading the stock 350 CFM carburetor, the 2-barrel unit that came on my 360 FE engine that's in my 1968 F100. I wanna replace it with a 500 CFM unit from Holley. This is gonna be a nice little upgrade to what I've got there. This is not as big as like a 4-barrel setup. We're not trying to go for big performance gains here, but I do want to improve on what I have. And I do like the flexibility that this kind of carburetor offers for me down the road as I continue to tweak and modify my engine. So let's get this thing off and take a look at what we got. All right, we got a couple easy things to take off. We'll get the choke cable out of here. We'll get the throttle linkage disassembled, vacuum line, this fuel line, get this out of here and then just pull this thing off. It's not terribly difficult, just a couple of fasteners and then we're done. All right, so here's the two units. They're very similar in size. If you look at the side number on here, and it's gonna be hard to read, but that actually says 1.23 down inside there, and that translates to a 351 cubic feet per minute carburetor. I gotta get a new towel. There we go. 351 cubic feet per minute carburetor. And that's plenty for that 360 because it's not a high revving performance engine. So this 500 CFM unit is gonna be, could it be overkill? Possibly. It'll definitely give me some options to rev the engine higher, but you're not gonna do that on these 360s. So I'm not doing it for that. But I do like the options for upgrading stuff in here. I can change the jets easier. It's easier to get parts for this than it is for these old Autolite. I think this is an Autolite 2100, I think. You can still buy parts for these. This unit here could be cleaned up and serviced. But for the cost of doing that, I'd rather have this because I get the future flexibility with this unit here. So this is a remanufactured carb. Nothing particularly exciting about it. I'm just gonna basically bolt it on. It's gonna go on in the same way that this one on. I also have the manual choke on here just to match the system I already have. Other cars have had the electric choke and I like that, but since I already have it in the truck, I'll just keep it. So other than that, let's get this thing bolted onto the truck. This is really not the hard part. Arguably the hard part is really dialing in the idle mixture screws and the curb idle screw, but we'll go over that here in a minute. The only other part that I want to cover is the fuel inlet. There's a couple different ways you can do that. There's different kits you can buy. You can utilize the existing fuel line on your vehicle. You can use a new one. I'm going to go ahead and put in this is a 1/2 20 inverted flare end on this end that's going to thread right into this Holley carb. We'll get those in, we'll get this tightened up. And then I've got a 6AN fitting on here that I'm gonna do to a different connection here to get this set up to accept the fuel line that's in the truck. I'll get this tightened up, then let's get this installed in the truck. All right, let's go ahead and slap this on here. I got a gasket, it came with the carburetor, but it's a good idea to put a new one on here if you don't have one. Get that guy on there. Before we slap this on there, a real quick shameless plug. I got a new shirt on my website, KruseBuilt. So a lot of you guys are familiar with my website and I've got a couple of shirts on there now. Here's just another one that goes with it. There's only one design here on the front. It's a t-shirt. It's the same build quality as the other ones. I really like this material. It doesn't shrink and it's comfortable to wear and it's breathable. And so for all of you hot boys like me in the summertime that sweat a lot, this is something that's great. It allows you to breathe a little bit. But this is just something that, another shirt that I wanted to offer on my site. And for those that have been buying my shirts and anything else on my site, I really do appreciate it. It does help me. Helps the builds that I've got going on here, and so I do appreciate that. And I don't say that enough, and I wanted to let you guys know that. But anyways, you can go ahead and grab this shirt on KruseBuilt.com. Enough of that, let's get back to this. So what I want to do is just point out real quick, I did get that fitting on here. This is installed, and this is just that 6AN fitting, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do that here in a minute. And then also on here, I've got that PCV setup that's on here already, so I don't need to use this. If I didn't have that set up, I'd have to utilize that. And then I'm not going to be using the ported port or the timed port. I am going to be using the manifold vacuum port. And I'll go over that here in a little bit too. And then we'll talk about the various things you need to do to get this set up. But for now, let's just go ahead and get this bolted on and hook everything back up. The throttle linkage and the choke cable and all this stuff. Let's get that put on here and then we can start talking about how to dial in this carb. All right, everything's installed, we're good to go. I might have to tweak the choke linkage here just to make sure I get everything set up right. I was messing with it in the truck and full actuation, it should be all right, but I can mess with that later. And then got the throttle linkage set up, which by the way, a lot of you guys know you can get this on KruseBuilt.com, so just a heads up if you guys want to get one of those custom linkages, you can get it there. So that's all set up, and then I did have to change the direction of this hose clamp. It was in the way because I got to use this manifold port here underneath the bowl, the fuel bowl. So I need to get to that with the vacuum advance line here when we get everything running. But the other thing, last thing I want to show you is the fuel the fuel line. I don't want to cut up this hard line, and obviously I can't do a right angle turn here off of this thing. You could buy some components maybe to go from this is a 1/2-20 inverted flare. That's that fitting on there. And the same thing on the inside of the Holley carb. So that's why I put that fitting for that 6AN, because I'm going to do this setup. I'm going to do a right angle on here with the 6AN female on each end. And then I'm going to have this 6AN fitting, which has got the 1/2-20 inverted flare female side on it. I'm going to put that in here. And I can tighten this up at the end here, but now I got to get this fuel line from here to here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to move this out of the way and bend it around the front of the distributor right up to this point. This is probably, there's a couple different ways you can do this. I'm trying to use what I've got here on the truck, so let's see how this comes out. All right, we got this installed, and what I did is I just took this hard line off, just disconnected it from the fuel pump, and took it over to the vise and kind of bent some of the things out, some of the bends in here, just gently, just slowly worked on it so I didn't have any creases or kinks. And then you just kind of fit it around the front here and kind of tweak a little bit. You can put it in there and just kind of bend some stuff, but just be careful because these are kind of brittle, and there are tools that you can buy. And really there's other ways to go. What I don't want is I want to have any problems with this setup here as I get, as I continue to work with this truck. And if I just use the hard line that was in here, then I should be good for now. Cool, so everything's hooked up. The next step is to fire up the truck, and this is where I've got other videos on how to dial in your idle mixture screws and your curb idle. This carburetor being remanufactured, refurbished, it's gonna have all of the settings where it needs to be. The float is set, the butterfly, the throttle plate is set, so that there's just the right amount of air getting by and stuff. All that's already done. If you had a used carb, you'll have to go through some of that stuff. So I'm going to skip a lot of the setup on this because I've got other videos on how to do that. But the short story is we're going to fire it up and set the idle mixture, the curb idle screw, which is back here, get to the idling where I want. And then we're going to let the truck warm up. And once it's warmed up, I'm going to hook up a vacuum gauge to the manifold vacuum port that's underneath the bowl here. We're going to adjust these idle mixture screws. There's one on this side and one on this side, and we're gonna try to find the highest vacuum condition with the idle that I have set. Whatever I do this side, I need to do that side. I'll come back, I'll take a look at the tach, see what the RPMs are. If I have to adjust it, I will, then I'll go back and do this. That's the short story on how to do this. You gotta have the truck warmed up when you do that. So let's get the truck warmed up and start dialing this thing in. So let's fire it up, and we're gonna check for fuel leaks, make sure that that's not a problem, and then we'll let the truck warm up and then dial it in. Also, just a heads up, because you don't have any fuel in there, it might take a couple turnovers just to get that fuel pump, to get the fuel up in there. So anyways. All right, so that's it, guys. It's that simple. I forgot to plug in the the vacuum line from my distributor when I was firing it up. So I got that plugged in, let the truck warm up, and then you notice how I just had this thing sitting there, and depending on what cam you have, the reading is not as important in terms of where it is on this graph. What you're looking for is the highest vacuum. So whatever it needs to be, whatever the highest needle is, that's what you're looking for, because some cams, particularly if you've got an aftermarket cam with a bunch of overlap and stuff, you're not going to get the vacuum that I would get on a stock setup. So I guess I want to put that back on. There we go. Okay, so that's back up. Now I just put the filter on and that's done. I did have to mess with the curb idle screw. I wanted to get it around 800 RPMs or so for this engine. And then once I got everything happy, again, just those idle mixture screws, and if you turn them in, it will cut the fuel, make it leaner, and you'll see a bog, or you see the RPMs drop, or the needle will drop on the vacuum gauge. So back it back out, and you're just looking for, open it up until you get the highest point. If you just keep opening it up, it's not getting higher, go back in, so you're just wasting fuel at that point. Do that on both sides and try to do it as even as you can. And then in the middle of that, once I got the highest vacuum, I went back and checked my RPMs. They were a little higher than I wanted, so I backed the screw off for the curb idle, brought it back down, checked them again. And you may take a couple of times to do that, but it's really not difficult at all. The only thing I need to do is adjust the choke, just the fast idle for the choke, but that's something I can do later. But other than that, she works. There's no leaks. She fires right up, and this is what we were looking for, was a new carb for this setup, and it just works, which is great. That's how it's supposed to be, right? Cool. All right, guys. Well, that's it. That's swapping out the carb, the stock carb, for just something a little bit nicer, little aftermarket unit for your 360 FE engine. Or this worked the same on the 390, be the same thing. But yeah, and then again, shameless plug, guys, if you want to get in the KruseBuilt shirts. And then I think I did point out the throttle linkage on here too, if you guys want to grab one of those. Anyways, all right, guys, that's it. That's a new carb. Thanks for watching.